Hey Joey, thanks for coming on the show today.
Absolutely, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. I've just been kind of following you for a long time,
Hmm.
seeing what you do with oilfield housing, and it seems like you have a really unique place in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, kind of started this journey, shoot, almost 8 years ago now, and started off with 10 bedrooms, and now we're up to 750. And I look back and we're like, how did this happen? And,
Wow.
we're here now, so we just gotta make the best of it, and it's doing pretty good.
Yeah.
The oil field is always a roller coaster, and it's
Yes.
um, it's a fun business to be in.
It looks like it, and like what I was telling you before, as long as I've been in the industry, oilfield housing, especially in West Texas, like primarily the Orla, Pecos, Jow area,
Hmm.
it's hard to find decent places to stay, or it
Yeah.
has been, over time. And it seems like oilfield housing just continues to improve, and you see a lot more man camps, and not just having them out there, but having like better quality camps.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with infrastructure. Um, I think you've seen Pecos kind of make a commitment to improving infrastructure and trying to grow Pecos a little bit. Orla is still Orla,
Yeah.
and it's one of those areas where you never need a room until you do, and then
Yeah.
you find yourself kind of scrambling. But Orla's infrastructure is very tough. They have power, but no water, no sewer. So when you talk about bringing a man camp to Orla, there's certainly some hurdles there, and some pretty steep hurdles. Being in Reeves County, they do a really good job of keeping their thumb on everybody and not letting everybody run just rogue.
Okay.
Um, Once you get up into Carlsbad, more infrastructure, a little bit easier to add units and rooms up there. But Orla is definitely a tough one. It's that spot just far enough away from Midland where companies don't feel comfortable with their guys driving back and forth.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at a 52-minute drive from Orla to Pecos could take you 3 hours if there's a
Mm-hmm.
wreck. It's not labeled death highway for nothing. It's a
Exactly.
it's a very dangerous highway. So um, Orla's a tight market. We have about 4 or 5 camps up there, which I think are all scratching at capacity right now. We're in, right at the midway point of the year with a strong forecast for the end of the year. So I think Orla's always going to be a tough market. The water there, if you do happen to get lucky and drill a water well and hit water, is hard water.
Mm.
So it's not as easy as just drilling a well and pumping that water straight to your camp.
Right.
There's things that you have to do before that water hits a bathroom or your kitchen. So it's been fun to see the whole climate of housing change. I think there was a serious reset in COVID. Pre-COVID, meals weren't really important to offer to the guest, and then coming out of COVID, it was almost like if you didn't have meals, you weren't a competitor. Like you
Interesting.
had to have meals.
Mm-hmm.
In Pecos, I have a camp that has meals, and I have one that doesn't have meals. In Orla, we provide meals with every stay. Um, and then in Carlsbad, we don't, but there's way more to choose from in Carlsbad.
Yeah.
Orla, you almost have to have meals because there's no other choice. Like, there's nothing
Mm-hmm.
to choose
There
from.
is absolutely nothing.
I mean, it's not
Yeah.
the busiest pilot in the country for nothing.
Right.
They
Exactly.
yeah, it's a pretty eventful situation when they restock at Pilot. Like
I
it just,
bet.
I mean,
I've been out there a couple of times over the last few years, and it's
mhm,
it's amazing for me to see it because, like I told you, when I worked in Orla, the pilot wasn't there. There were
yeah,
no man camps. There was no way you could stay out there.
right,
There was no food options. There was barely even a gas option. So I was pretty amazed when I walked into the pilot and I saw what was there. But even, after a while, like you can only eat so much of the same things, and it goes from being a luxury to a burnout real quick. And
no
then,
doubt.
wanting to have healthy meals or home cooked or, just
Hmm.
feeling like you're going to go home and have dinner, not you've got to go buy
Right.
the truck stop first, and
No
so I
doubt.
think that offers a little bit more of the support being in the field. It's really hard to work in that area.
Mm-hmm.
After a while, it gets to you, it weighs on you,
Yeah.
working in those hitches and being isolated. So all those little things add up.
No
just
doubt.
just having that comfortable living environment and food provided and having that to look forward to when you get off work.
Yeah, because it was the old saying, like an army marches on its belly.
Oh,
I think
that's a good
I think
one.
that really like relates to the oil field housing side of things too, because when you got guys that are there, um, they're 10 hours away from home. They're in Orla, Texas, where
Hmm.
there's not a whole lot to do. Good, healthy options, not just one option, but multiple options, is very important. And we feel like we've been placed with a bunch of trust to take care of all of these companies' employees. So providing a good weight room and a rec room and a good cafeteria, and then most importantly, service is what I think goes kind of under the radar, but is probably the most important thing, is um, killing them with kindness and just showing them, like, here, we're here for you. You just got off your shift. You
Hmm.
just worked 10 hours in the sun. Like,
Yeah.
how can I help you? How can I serve you?
Right.
And our Orla camp is 375 beds. It's a huge camp. It's a full service camp, on 285, right by the pilot. So we're in the thick of it. We experience it every day, and it's West Texas too. I mean, there's a lot of struggles in just weather and getting supplies. I mean, you've lived it. You
Yeah.
understand what I'm talking
Yeah,
about. So
absolutely.
when you talk about meals, I think meals are just as important as the room size and the cleanliness of the room, because it's the fuel that keeps them going.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that, and I love how you framed it because, working in the oil field, it's tough. Like you said, just the conditions are tough, and it's being so isolated, and then the rest of the world doesn't really understand what you're doing. There's not a lot of appreciation there for your work, and so to go home and have some place to go to that, like you're saying, it's like, how can we serve you,
Mm-hmm.
like that flips the script,
Right.
where because I had my camper when I stayed in Pecos, and then when of course, I moved over to Carlsbad, which was better but not by much. I mean, the drive is still the same. It's still, it's still just a struggle. And so it's like, you come home, if you have a problem with your camper, or you have a problem where you're staying, or you're just there. A lot of these RV parks, they're just caliche lots,
Mm-hmm.
caliche pads, and there isn't anything. It's like trying to go do laundry. It's everybody's doing it at once, or it's closed. It closes early
Right.
on Sunday. Like, there's all of these additional struggles.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's already hard enough to be working somewhere in the field in the demanding conditions that they are, and so to have something to look forward to, just that small, like, friendly service, and like,
Right.
something that you mentioned too, it's you are, kind of a smaller operation, but that's also, a really great thing for the companies wanting that personal service where they can reach you directly.
Right.
It's not necessarily that, well, it isn't that corporate procedure of,
Yeah.
filling out, forms online, or, emailing. Like, they can text you or they can call you,
Yeah.
and so you feel like you're going to get, like, that service, that level of service also.
Correct. And it's kind of a double-edged sword, because I love giving the small business approach. And hey Joey, I've got 8 guys headed to Pecos tomorrow. Here's their contacts. And I'll drop them a pin, pass it on to a property manager. But the reality is, I have 4 restaurants. I'm married. I have 4 kids. So
Right.
sometimes I'm coaching third base, and I'm like catching a text
Oh.
message with 10 guests that are showing up to Pecos in 30 minutes, and,
That's
and the
awesome.
kids running around third. No, I'm sorry. Just keep going. You
Oh,
know,
that's awesome.
but like I said, it started out with a small amount, and now we've grown it, and I embrace it. I love it. And I think my customers really love being able to have that personal touch of, like, look, when I'm in a jam, I know Joey will make it happen.
Right.
And it is the oil field, and it is a make it happen mindset.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're selling torque wrenches
Mm-hmm.
or rooms. Like, when customers call, you got to find a way to make it happen, and
Yeah.
we find a good way to do that.
Well, and it's the industry so cyclical, so you have to
Hmm.
move with it,
Yeah.
and to be able to kind of have be a little bit nimble.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you're not even in West Texas, and your mindset's not even thinking about that,
Right.
but you have to be able to kind of balance the two realms, or
Hmm.
maybe three or four realms,
Yeah.
like with everything that you have going on. But like you said, like being committed to it and being passionate about it,
Right.
it's like you don't have to physically be there to understand the demands and to be just as committed to that as just like what else you may have in front of you.
No doubt. And I think especially in West Texas, like you're such on an island,
Yes.
and everybody's out there to make money ultimately. But I think whenever you show the customer base that you just really care about them is how you gain the trust.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've had plenty of times where I've had a customer that hadn't used me in 10 years, or no, I'm sorry, 10 months, who will hit me up and like, hey man, like this is Patrick, like I don't know if you remember me. I'm like, yeah man, what's up? I got a guy headed to Orla tomorrow, but he needs a spot in Pecos tonight. Can you just? I don't even send him a bill for it because I'm like, man, it's a one night type
Yeah.
of deal. Not that I'm just gonna give rooms away, but it's not always about chasing the dollar. You know what I
Right.
mean? Because it's
Exactly.
you got to find ways to just flat out help people out. That's
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I was probably the most shocked about the West Texas, I guess, sector in a whole was just how sometimes it can be flat out cutthroat,
Yeah.
and you got this little coon ass boy from Louisiana showing up out there and thinking like, oh yeah, and I'm like, man, this is a different game,
It totally it can be very
um,
savage.
but which is there's a lot of pluses to that too. It makes you sharp, it makes you
Yeah.
get better, it makes you focus on ways that you might be getting beat. But I think when you approach it with a quality over quantity,
Yeah.
structure. It kind of sets you free a little bit, but
For sure.
at the end of the day, you got a customer base that you got to take care of, and like I said, I think where sometimes people get lost is when they chasing every single dollar, and
Mm-hmm.
especially in West Texas, I think it goes a long way when you just flat out help somebody out.
It really does. And it's refreshing because it's, again, with the difficulty, the nature of the work, it's like you get in a jam that one thing, like having an employee that you've got to find him a place to stay. He's traveling from, across the country,
Yep.
and you've got all this other stuff you've got going on. Like the last thing you need to really be concerned about is where is he going to stay.
Mm-hmm.
But that's huge
Yeah.
because, like, I mean, I've worked all over the country. I grew up like that. I know how difficult it can be to even like you're trying to manage your lodging from a different part of the country. You don't even know where you're going. And so you're,
Right.
you're trying to imagine where you're going to land. And I've actually been traveling to jobs before and, not even found a place to stay
Mm-hmm.
until you're on your way.
Yep.
And it's like rooms get full. RV parks get full, and then you get into a panic, and you're just trying to get to work,
Yeah.
and it's so difficult. And so
Right.
for you to be able to like not just have the room available, but to say, you know what, like haven't heard from this guy in a while, want to help him out. You can totally afford to do that. Like you said, you're not just trying to, give things away,
Right.
but that's going to go a long way because he's going to remember that.
Yeah.
If he's got a big project or a bunch of guys, or he wants to, he's got someone, buddy of his, or business, other somebody that owns another business that he knows that needs rooms, he's
Yeah.
going to recommend you.
No doubt.
And so that's going to pay dividends in the long run, but also just wanting to help people, it does change the narrative because I mean, I've seen it, I've experienced it. It can be very disheartening how competitive and cutthroat West Texas can be. I think it's part of it is chasing the dollar, but it's also because it's so isolated, you get in that competitive mindset and you don't
Mm-hmm.
come out of it.
Right.
So I think a lot of people just stay in that and then they want to beat their competitor, they want to be better than this guy, or
Right.
and then there's the fear that it's all going to just go away
Mm-hmm.
because the way that business changes. So if you stay true to yourself and you can manage your workload, you're going to be able to provide that quality more than you're going to be worried about trying to get more quantity.
Correct. No doubt. And another part of the reality of housing is that on a P&L, housing is a big line item for like companies because when you're housing 25 guys in basically hotels for 50, 60 days, when you're looking at all of your expenses, housing is going to jump off the page
Okay.
to the point where you're like, man, why don't we just build our own? But the
Mm.
reality is a lot of these companies don't want to play landlord. Like they would rather
Sure.
us have to handle. They're worried about a 62 stage well that
Yeah,
they would wire
exactly.
line. Like they're in an office and they're mapping out all the job, how many people, how long, what supplies you need to get, like how are we going to split this crew up, how many people do we need more and night, and then all of a sudden they're like, wait, we got to house them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then in the on the restaurant side of things, I can back in Louisiana when I do caterings, it's kind of like what I mentioned to you. Is like when a pharmaceutical rep has to feed a doctor's office. A lot of times, the only reason they're feeding the doctor's office is to be able to talk to the doctor. They really don't care
Mm-hmm.
about the lunch itself.
Right.
So they call me to do the lunch. I deliver it for them, and it removes the headache of having to worry about lunch. They're worried about selling a drug.
Right.
Well, in housing, when they can call me and just, hey man, this is what I have, take care of it, I eliminate a headache. And in the oil field, what I've found is the person that is able to eliminate headaches for customers are the ones that are going to win,
For
because
sure.
there's so many balls in the air that these managers and operators are, hey man, the less headaches I have, the better for me.
Mm-hmm.
Where like I've reached out to some of my customers and, hey man, I had 2 acres free up on this piece of property. Like if you need a stage, a crane, or any type of equipment for you in Pecos, so you don't have to take it back to Midland, and it is like kind of almost looking out for them a step ahead of them.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times it doesn't even apply to them, but boy, is the satisfaction that you get when you find a way to help one of them. That you like, man, I helped that guy out. Like I made him have one less worry. It's just part of the whole process of making a customer happy that leads to, like you said, it's a word of mouth game. This day and age, especially with all the social medias and how everyone is so connected,
Mm-hmm.
um, like your reputation and the word of mouth and what people are saying about you when you're not on your platform really is a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It seems like it's a natural fit for you though, because like you said, you own 4 restaurants. So you are very, that's in your niche as far as that hospitality side.
Hmm.
So it kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I think you know the hospitality side of things is you. It's not meant for everyone. It's a tough kind of approach of trying to keep everybody happy. There's a lot of juggling acts that go along with that. But being I got in the restaurant business when I was 25 years old. Like I was young and I just kind of I jumped in it. And I think the whole hospitality restaurant, there's a lot of similar traits in there. And the reality of oilfield housing is you're dealing with a bunch of grown men that have a bunch of different likes and a bunch of different tastes. So
Mm,
you have to be able to kind of move on the fly and understand that everybody's different, and everybody likes different things, especially the food. Like when you're dealing with people's taste buds, man, that gets really tricky because some people prefer American cuisine and some people prefer Mexican, and all of a sudden you're serving too much of the same thing too many times, and
mm.
you're having to keep that rotated. And I don't know, it's a fun game, but I have an incredible team. I have incredible management and housekeepers and kitchen workers, and but the most thing, I think we have a really good communication between us and our customers too. So whenever we are having issues, they feel comfortable enough to voice their concerns without I don't even want to use the word retaliation because we would never. But sometimes people are afraid to say what they don't like because they're
Oh,
afraid you might try to.
like repercussion.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
mean, like, uh, we have a really good customer relations with our customers that it's an open door policy, and we've had to learn on the fly a few times, but for the most part, it's going really good.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't have even really thought about it, from the customer service side or like, because your customer is essentially, the business that's you know, wanting their employees to stay
Hmm.
on your property, but then you're also taking care of their employees. So does that get tricky as far as, like do you have any issues as far as, the guys that are staying in the camps, or are there things that you've kind of had to adjust to as far as like that oil field culture and
Yeah.
um
Um, I mean, I think, like I said, when you're housing just so many different ethnic groups, you're gonna have multiple requests. Um, and I think it's vetting out which ones that you are obtainable to correct, and then you're just gonna have to make some adjustments to make the other ones happy.
mm,
But for the most part, like, they're only in their room for 7 or 8 hours.
that's true. They're not really there for
Correct. Now, some of them stay. I mean, they treat it like an apartment. I mean, we have two of our properties. We have guests that have been with us for over 3 years. The same person. Like, they're in Pecos or they're in Orla, and then 2 weeks later they go home for 3 or 4 days. When they come back, they have their same room.
okay.
So, you know, there's literally like, man, can I get a mini fridge in my room, or I need this or that, and we definitely make adjustments to request. It's just, again, it's an open line of communication, and it trickles down all the way to the groundskeepers and the housekeepers that are going through the rooms. Like, hey, look, I noticed the drawer on that dresser was broken, and you go in and you change out the dresser, and the guest shows back up and they're like, oh man, I got a new dresser.
Oh,
So
that's
it's like
cool. Yeah.
making sure that you're paying attention to detail,
Mhm.
keeping the lot clean, and you know if you know West Texas, the wind blows pretty hard,
Yeah.
so you could pick up trash and then 6 hours later it's full of trash again.
Right.
And there's a lot of great camps out there. I am a mom and pop organization compared to Target and Armadillo and CHS. Like, those camps I look up to, man. I learned so much from them. I've had great relationships and open lines of communication with a bunch of other camps. They are competitors, but we're in the same game. So there's countless. I don't have any camps in Midland, so when I get a call from Midland, I call one of my other housing buddies in Midland that I just, with no like expectation of a commission coming back.
Right.
Like, hey, look, I got this company
Just
that
kind of
needs.
pay it forward,
Yeah, like,
help
hey man,
out.
here you go.
Yeah.
Like, hope it works out for you. Like,
Sure.
think of me in Pecos if you ever need something in Pecos.
I like doing stuff like that. That's so fun.
That's
Sometimes
it.
it's just like a good vibe.
That's it.
You know,
I think I
it's
get
like
more satisfaction out of doing that
I have
than
definitely.
landing like a 10 bed
Sure.
30 day deal, which those are great.
Mhm.
But like, man, when I pass something on and just like,
It's
hey,
just a good feeling.
I mean, it's a satisfying feeling.
It
And
really is.
I
I
think that
totally
ties
get
back
it.
to what I was saying on the cutthroat side. Is just like, man, like, I don't know if I'm just so ADD that like those kind of things make me just genuinely happy. But
Yeah.
I I don't know. I think it's a fun game out there, and you got to stay moving. You got to continue to adapt and adjust. But at the end of the day, it's the oil field. It's going to have its highs and lows. You do have to stay with the times, and I'm very happy I'm in that game.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love hearing that. It's very uplifting. Like the service you provide, like not only like that it's needed, but that you can constantly be raising the bar,
Right.
and that you have such a positive outlook on what you're doing, and just you're just helping people. You're
Right.
helping people be able to do their jobs better, and to be comfortable, and provide a better quality environment, because I mean
Hmm.
it's tough out there as far as just like finding decent places to stay, and companies, like you said, they have other things to worry about, not just figuring out where they're going to have their employees staying while they're working for them.
Yep.
And so I can see where that'd be a fun game to be in, a good part of the industry. But you told me before it was an interesting story how you got into it. So
Hmm.
you got into the restaurant business at 25,
Yep.
and then when did the oilfield housing develop?
Yeah, I'm 42. I was probably 34. I had a buddy from South Louisiana moving out to West Texas to chase business. He had a business in South Louisiana, and my dad is in the uniform business, like Oilfield uniforms in Louisiana. He had a customer moving from the Haynesville Shale in Shreveport out to West Texas, and he's providing uniforms for them. And he, they were like, man, the uniforms are great, but the housing is killing us, man. Like we can't find rooms, and when we do, they're really expensive. So
Yeah.
we dropped 2 5-bedroom trailers out in the middle of, I think it was Jao, New Mexico, and just started building them on a 30-day deal, and they were paying within like 14 days. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Now, there was a lot of moving and, making things happen on the fly, and then led us to Pecos, and then we landed a big deal with Pilot Flying J that kind of set us on the map. We built a 20,000 square foot shop on Highway 285, and a 200-room development behind it, so their employees could walk to work.
Oh, very cool.
Pretty unique property we have on our hands there, with city water, but we're outside the city limits, and that was certainly a bunch of hurdles. We took a barren piece of land and constructed this monstrosity of a shop and housing development, and then moved up into Carlsbad, moved some trailers up there, and then recently, about 3 years ago, we bought Century Lodge in Orla, which has been a really good camp for us. We have a really good anchor tenant there that occupies probably 300 of our beds. It's a 375 bed camp, like I mentioned, and we were able to expand that camp a little bit, add some beds to it after we bought it, and it's a fun ride right now. It's a lot in motion. It's when you're dealing with companies popping back between Pecos and Orla, and then they moved to Kermit, and then we're going to be in Monahans, and you sit there and you try to juggle as best as you can. But like I said, I got in the game with 10 rooms thinking that was going to be pretty much it, and then next thing you know, it just started morphing, and then like we had a serious reset with COVID. I think everybody saw that, and I don't think we've rebounded from it totally. The market has just totally changed. I think the spending and the budgets are significantly less. Where like when I first got in the game, we were getting $120 a night for a room with no meals, and it sounds like, oh my gosh, that's a lot. But when you compare it to a hotel room, it's kind of even par, and hotels are sitting there tied into most of the time local utilities. You're sitting there in Orla where you're having to haul water in, and sometimes you're having to haul sewer and septic out. That hotels never have to experience. But the rates are lower in man camps compared to hotel rooms, and they're getting meals in man camps. So
and you're right there, you don't have to drive.
So but my point was like it was 120 a night. Now we're under 100, and we're offering meals. Where pre-COVID people offered meals, but it wasn't a make or break deal.
Yeah, you mentioned that. What was you said that after COVID, it was like, meals almost became mandatory. Like, what do you think changed there?
Well, I think due to COVID restrictions, I think you had a lot of deals where you couldn't have, you saw double occupancy rooms kind of go away. Now they're trying to come back a little bit. And providing meals, it was a deal where like they were trying to keep their guys at the camp, not having to go interact in towns, and then with the fear of catching COVID. But then that turned into just a norm. That was an expectation, with meals.
Because they probably saw the benefits of that, and
correct.
I mean, beyond just trying to prevent COVID, it was like, hey, like this is an essential. It's not a luxury. It's really, like you said, you have camps without meals, but I could see a lot of companies wanting to provide that.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's a cost savings too, because when you look at paying a guy $150 a day for per diem to cover housing and meals, or I can provide the housing and meals for you for $100. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know the dynamics of every company, but you got to think there's a little bit of a cost savings too for a company when they don't have to actually pay per diem, which I think a lot of guys look forward to per diem, but per diem's cool and all, when there's a ample amount of choice. But
Yeah, and so you got to weigh that out
yeah,
because you
so
may be getting per diem, but then you're having to go through, you have to jump through hoops
yeah, you may have to say
just
two
to
and a
get,
half hours
yeah,
away,
yeah. And then
so
it's like that. So you're really not gaining a lot because then
correct.
you're basically getting that for the amount of time
Mm-hmm.
that you're traveling or,
Yep.
what you're having to do on your own when you can just be right there.
Correct.
You don't have all that extra energy
Right.
put out and
Yep.
wasted,
Yep.
essentially.
Yep. You're absolutely right. But every company does it different. And when I mentioned like having to adapt and adjust, I think we've done a great job of that. Where we can offer meals or no meals or doubles or singles. Um,
You got a couple options to
yeah.
where you can tweak it, make it your own, but
Right.
it's not, yeah, it's, gosh, I mean, just the way housing has evolved over time because hotels can get very expensive.
Yeah. And there's a lot of talk in Pecos of things coming, which is just going to raise the ceiling on hotel rooms too. There's talks of a data center. There's talks of
Oh,
a
yeah, that's right.
jet fuel facility come in, and that's all going to bring out of town people to work. I think you had a lot of inventory hit the market, meaning there was another like other camps built in say Pecos. Armadillo came in, built a phenomenal camp. The reality is they added a few hundred beds to the market, and like right as COVID was hitting, or
Mm.
in the middle of COVID, they were building, and um, it just probably brought needed inventory to the market. But you know, as while right now I think there's a lot of availability on the market right now, especially in Pecos. In 2 years, it could be like solid booked up again if one of these data centers
Right.
come, or I know they're talking about building a loop around Pecos to avoid.
Wow.
Yeah, it's gonna coming from east to west. If you leave in Midland, if you're familiar with Barstow,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so they're
Hmm.
going to be building a loop around Pecos to keep 18-wheeler traffic out
Yeah.
of um, the town of Pecos, just because the
Okay.
roads are getting beat up.
I could see that.
So probably 5 to 7 years away. But if you're coming down 285 and you're going to Midland, you won't be able to go through town anymore. You'll have to take the loop to get to dump out onto 20 going east.
Do
So
you think that'll help with the accidents that?
it should. I know they're talking about putting a barrier in between, down the middle of 285 to keep it like there won't be any. You won't be able to make any
No more. Okay.
left turns. I guess
Hmm.
designed. There'll be a design left turns, but I mean I've seen Tex dot. Our 285 property is at the dump out, like where you're coming from Midland going to Orla. You're going to come out at our property, and coming down from Orla to go to Midland, you're going to turn at our property. So we really we looked up on that location.
Yeah, you
But
did.
like I said, I mean, I think they're in the funding stage right now, just like every other road construction project. I'm sure
Sure.
it's going to take a while. But
Yeah, that's not an
um,
overnight. Well, I mean, I haven't been out to Midland probably maybe 7 months, but I know I-20's been tore up
yeah,
for a while. When was the last time you were out there?
I was out there in June, April. I went out there. I try to go there every quarter. It's good just to put my eyes on it, and I have my thumb on it every day.
Sure.
But I think getting out there at least once a quarter for me is very, very important. You get to see kind of what's changing, and I make a point to go to the local governments and just kind of what's coming up. Is there anything that
Yeah.
we need to know about? And that's the one thing about Pecos, man. That they have a really good local government, and they're very transparent. All the city councilmen and people are very helpful whenever you ask questions, and sometimes that's hard to find, especially being somebody from Louisiana going out there. Sometimes
Yeah.
their guards are up a little bit,
Yeah,
but
that's true. Because you'd be kind of be seen as an
yeah,
outsider.
but I've been greeted with nothing but positive, and just I guess they view me as a person coming in and investing in their community and
Yeah,
helping it
you
grow.
add value.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it's a good business for them to have. They see the benefits of you being there.
absolutely.
I bet that cuts down on a lot of um, I guess, friction in the environment where you have, different types of, because there's a lot, there tends to be more, I guess, crime
Mm-hmm.
and, violence and things that happen in RV parks that aren't managed, or, the
Yeah.
smaller establishments will pop up,
Yeah.
and they're not necessarily, like, they don't necessarily have any type of, um, leadership or thoughtfulness to them. They're
Right.
just there, and so you're
Yeah.
gonna get what you get. There
Mm-hmm.
can be a lot of riffraff. I've stayed out. Gosh, I've stayed in almost every small town out there, like Pecos, Carlsbad, Monahans, Wink, Kermit, Andrews, Odessa, and finally I moved to Midland. I finally sold my camper. I don't even
Yeah.
have it anymore, but I could see the different demographics everywhere
Yep.
where I was, where it was like I was in a pretty safe spot or I wasn't. And I really think a lot of the like locations like that, it's so easy to get in and out of, and you don't really know who's staying there.
Mm-hmm.
And so with, the man camps, it's like they're going through their employers first for the most part,
Yep.
and so there's that accountability there.
Yes.
So and then you have only so many people that are staying. Obviously, single occupancy or double occupancy, RV park, who knows?
Right.
And you don't know who you're getting, and so that can create some unwanted, things happening.
Right.
And so I could see where the local government would be happy to,
Yeah.
oblige you with information and keep you abreast of what's
Yeah. Right.
happening.
And they're in a tough spot, man, because they love the commerce and the tax dollars that come with all these out of town guys that are coming in, and but they want long term residents, and
Hmm.
but they got to kind of embrace the side of it. So yeah, I think to the property owners that are trying to make sure that the property is kept up and well presented and
Hmm.
follow the rules, those are the ones that I think are in a spot of good growth compared to maybe some of the rogue like fly
Yeah,
by nighters.
more
You know what I
rogue,
mean?
fly-by-nighters, absolutely, for sure. Because it is difficult, and I mean they'll say this like from Pecos to Midland. It's like the boom or bust culture can really hurt the local
Yes.
economy and the local community
Right.
because you get people that come in and kind of tear things up and
Mm-hmm.
take over and then they leave.
Yep.
And so it's like you have this stimulation of the economy of spending and then you don't, or you have
Yeah.
people that come through that aren't respectful of their environment
Yep.
and not being mindful of the local people that live there, and so it's like wanting to have even at least the property that you own that's there, that's managed. I mean the tenants are going to come and go.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them obviously could be there for very long term, but for the most part, like you're managing it consistently.
Yep.
So even if there's a turnover with who's staying on your property, the property still has the standard,
Correct.
and you're still delivering the same service. So they're able to embrace that and kind of get a little bit of that stability.
Yep. And when you mentioned the boom or bust, like that would probably be my number one piece of advice to give anybody that's thinking about getting in the man camp or hospitality world, is the fact that you got to be ultra smart with your money and understand that this is the oil field. So um, all of our companies are a get out of debt as fast as possible structure. So there may be some funds that you reserve for like tax burdens at the end of the year, but for the most part, you're attacking principles and you're trying to be super disciplined with getting notes paid off as fast as possible, because if you talk to anybody, a lot of people didn't make it through COVID, and when oil dips down below zero and people move out overnight, like
Yeah.
you got to be kind of protected. Thankfully, we had contracts in place that kind of hedged us from that and protected us from that. But um, you know, you have to be pretty smart with structure and debt, getting into the hospitality realm, especially in oil field.
Mm, yeah, that's true. And so, like, I mean, you kind of came in with that wisdom coming from a hospitality background,
Yeah.
but then being able to apply that and just, having good business sense.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing about the oil field is people will live outside of their means. If
Yeah.
they're not working that
Right.
particular job or in this industry, they wouldn't be able to afford the lifestyle they have.
Yeah.
Or businesses that are maybe kind of riding the wave of, the boom.
Hmm.
And so when something catastrophic like COVID happens, they they physically cannot withstand it.
Yeah.
Or you start like kind of things start coming to the surface, like, well, how was business really being done for this length of time
Yeah.
if, suddenly you're, not able to keep up with payroll or to
Yeah.
pay your vendors.
Oh
And so
no.
a lot of people went under just because they hadn't been in those good business practices in the first place.
Right. Yeah, because revenue can cover up a lot of blemishes. You got when a revenue's coming in and business is rolling, you can be inefficient, and it kind of protects itself because the money just keeps coming in. But
That's true.
whenever you operate on razor thin margins, and then when it's good, it's really good, but when it's bad, you're still okay. Then that was an adjustment for me going from restaurants to housing. I mean, it's different margins in different areas, and food costs. While in the restaurant game, it's really important. It's important on the man camp side, but you also have labor in cleaning rooms, and labor is important in restaurants as well. So there's different levels of importance there that for me it was a little bit of an adjustment, but um, you know, getting embedded with good long-term tenants is always going to be the best play. Not saying that per diem or one-night guests are bad. It's just when you find a good tenant that pays well, that's another one. Sometimes you can turn into a finance company real quick.
Yeah.
Waiting on 60, 90-day term money can be sometimes painful. Sometimes it could put people under,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I've watched other of your podcasts, and you know it's a very diversified struggle.
Hmm.
They
Yep.
I think everybody that's in the oil field will understand how important you know within means terms is to your business.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, just good practices all around. It's like managing the business and your finances and providing good service to your customers and wanting to do things to help people and just really being a part of the industry on that new standard. I feel
Right.
like we're really in a place in the industry where we're not just doing the work, we're wanting to do it better.
Hmm.
And I think just obvious, like always setting yourself apart by just wanting to do better with what you have and working with others and just really staying consistent.
Hmm.
Consistency is also huge in an industry that can be so inconsistent. Being stable
Yeah.
is, I mean, that is really unmatched because people that ride the wave, they don't know how to maintain when things get lean or when times get hard, or just really being able to provide the same quality like that over time. Like you're going to be able to withstand, and then you'll be able to be a bigger player, or expand, or like whatever your goals may be.
Right.
But it's like just honestly, like just being able to manage what you have and being able to improve on your own quality. Like I get that, like that's so rewarding.
Yeah. I mean it is, and I think it's something that goes a long way when your customers see that you're constantly trying to change and adapt and adjust to their needs. I think that's what sets apart the good from the bad.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I've really enjoyed talking to you today, Joey, and
Yeah,
I appreciate what you're doing, and I've learned a lot, and I just look forward to, continuing to see what you do in the future.
absolutely. I appreciate your time.
Yep. And thank you, everyone, for watching Power of the Permian. We'll see you next time.